Hello and welcome to another edition of Kayak Fishing Weekly. I'm your host, Justin Largen, and as always, we're the show on the Serious Angler Network that is dedicated to all things kayak fishing. We've got a fun show this week, a great guest, and it's another topic kind of in keeping with what feels like the theme for this year, stuff I'm not good at, stuff that I selfishly want to get better at, but hopefully by bringing these guests on and learning a little bit myself, I'm also helping you out there pick up some little nuggets to help you with your fishing. And winter cranking, it's something I've not really done much of. I've done some shallow cranking with the square bill. I feel somewhat competent with that, not great at it, but I can catch fish with it. I caught some fish with medium crankbaits. I don't do a lot of deep cranking, but winter cranking is, I feel like it's its own little niche. And we got Alex Rudd on tonight to show us how he does it. So I'm excited to get him on. Before I do that, though, we don't have a ton of news and notes in the industry. Like we mentioned last week, do we have let's see, Kissimmee Chain, the second stop of the Bassmaster Kayak Series, is coming up here. Let's see, the time that this drops, we'll be a couple days away from that kicking off. As of right now, there's 184 anglers signed up. Maybe we get to 200. Even if we don't, it's still going to be a great field. It's going to be a good payday for a number of anglers, and every one of those anglers in that field is going to have a chance to catch that fish of a lifetime on any given cast. I love Florida. I cannot wait to get down there, get out of the cold, and into some warmth. So yeah, that's all we've got kind of on the upcoming tournament front. I wanted to talk about these cool glasses though for a minute. I just got these the other day. Thanks, Dylan. These are the new hull floats from Hobie Eyewear. It's a cool idea. They actually made these frames out of upcycled plastic. So it's basically like recycling the hull of Hobie kayaks and making frames that float. So I have not actually had a chance to get on the water with them yet, but can't wait to do that in Florida. So thanks, Dylan, and everybody at Hobie Eyewear for those. Looking forward to playing with those down in Florida, hopefully spotting some big old fish. And then before I get to our guest, I want to do one other thing. Let's see if I can remember how to do the screen share halfway efficiently. Bear with me. I'm old and not good at technology. Let's go full screen. So what I'm looking at, what you're looking at, is the Sniper Marine website. So it's snipermarine.com. There's a tab at the top you can click on to get into the kayak specific stuff. For anybody who's not familiar with the brand, they're one of our partners for 2025. I'd mentioned that on a previous show. And they make poles and mounts for forward facing sonar, and not just for the big boats, for us and our little kayaks too. I know live scope, forward facing, it's not for everybody, and that's cool. But if it's something that you want to learn, Sniper Marine, they can help you. And let's see if I can scroll. They've got some ideas on here, videos and photos of how some other top anglers have outfitted their kayaks. We've got a video here from Casey Reed on how he's setting up his Old Town autopilot. I see one from Jordan Marshall on his Hobie. And then I think if you check out their Instagram page, there's some stuff from our very own Bailey Igrit. So thank you to Sniper Marine for partnering with us for this year. And again, if you're interested in getting into the forward facing game, Sniper Marine can help you. And let's see, I think that will do it for news and notes. Let's go ahead and get to our guest, Alex Rudd, ladies and gentlemen. Alex, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, dude. I'm excited. I love you said let's talk about crankbait fishing, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. I like to crank a crankbait just a little bit.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of your videos with that little money badger.
Oh yeah.
You sold me on it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of saying before bringing you on that I'm not great with crankbaits,
Yeah.
so I'm just hoping to learn.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Hopefully, I can ask the right questions.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess it's always hard for me to figure out what the right starting question is.
Yeah.
But let's try. Where is it? I guess what's different about wintertime cranking versus other times of the year? Why should we get out there and sling a crankbait right now versus doing something like an A rig or a jig or other techniques? What's special about that cranking?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? I mean, like I think an A rig, and okay, so I'll address the A rig first. I think an A rig is probably one of the most effective cold water baits that you can throw. Now, I'm going to put a crankbait and an A rig right up there together, definitely depending on the situation that you're in.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Um, I think what makes a crankbait as effective as it is during the winter, a lot of the times we're not trying to trick the fish as much as we're just trying to get them to react to something. You know what I mean? And like that's the deal with like super lethargic fish. A lot of the times, if you can hit that switch and you can get that little light switch they have in their head to turn on to like I have to eat that, then you can get those fish to bite. I mean, it's essentially the entire idea that Kevin Van Dam built his entire career around. You know what I mean? Like that he was just an incessant power fisherman. And a lot of it had to do with, he's not going to spend a bunch of time like in one area trying to get 5 fish to bite. What he's going to do is he's going to cover as much water as he can and try to get, 20 fish to bite, when he puts the bait in front of 500 fish instead of getting 5 fish to bite when he's only put the bait in front of 200 fish. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just interesting. I think when it comes to crankbait fishing in the winter, that's like my goal, right? And like I don't want to be the guy out there like I'll do it when I have to, but in the reality of it, I don't want to be the guy out there like daubing a jig, just like icing your guides, barely moving, trying to get them to bite. I'd rather be going down the bank, throwing something like that Blaze Money Badger, something bright, something loud, something displacing a ton of water that's going to get those fish to react. Because if I can put my bait in front of 100 fish and I can get 20 of them to react, well, that's 20 bites. Where someone else that's throwing a jig might put their bait in front of 50 fish and only get 5 bites. And so that's kind of my thought process on it when it comes to like why throw a crankbait this time of year. I think another really effective thing this time of year is especially for my fish. So I live in East Tennessee, but this technique I've taken it all across the country and caught fish with it. But we live on some very riverine style lakes, and we live on Highland Reservoir style lakes. And so we've got a lot of vertical cover and vertical structure. And what I mean by that is, like bluff walls and, very steep banks and things like that. A lot of rock, a lot of sand that mixes with pebbles, big boulders, stuff like that. And those fish this time of year use that stuff a ton because the water level is constantly going up and down, right? And so, like some of these Highland reservoirs around me, we'll have some of them that will drop 25 or 30 feet during the winter, and then they'll
That's
come.
the drawdown?
Oh yeah, some of these like
Good
Norris.
Lord.
I think Norris this year they've pulled it down. It's some of the lowest I've ever seen it. And they pulled it down like 32, 33 feet. I've seen Douglas down like 40 feet before. Like, dude, it looks like the surface of Mars up there. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
That throws me off like that. And I don't want to take us on too far of a tangent,
Yeah,
but I remember the first time I fished Chickamauga was like the summer pool when it's up.
yeah,
And I went back in the springtime, and everywhere where I'd caught fish, there
without
was no
water.
water.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 foot, whatever the difference is there. I can't even imagine 30 foot.
yeah. It's crazy.
It's like a different lake.
It is, dude, and that's it. I mean, it's a completely different lake, and that's what's really cool kind of about where we live is like in the winter, you're like paddling down a bank or you're motoring down a bank and like you're like, damn, that brush pile is going to be in the water in July and that's going to be really good. And you drop a pin on it and keep on going. And then, summer rolls around, that brush pile's in 15 foot of water and you throw a jig up there and you get them to bite. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really cool.
I
But
never even thought of that.
yeah, so because we have that like variable water level, and in the fact that where I live here too, in the eastern part of Tennessee, the reason these dams were actually designed is flood mitigation, and we get most of our rain during the winter. And so like we actually live in a deciduous rainforest. So like technically where I live is a rainforest. And because of that, they built these dams to help mitigate the flooding that happened in the winter. And so we'll have like massive influx of rain come in here. And these lakes will go up 10 feet one day, and then they'll draw them down that 10 feet again to help mitigate any floods that may happen downstream from these lakes. And so these fish use that vertical cover because instead of having to move horizontally, they just move vertically. because it's a lot easier for them to just follow the water level down than it is for them to try to swim out of a pocket, a quarter of a mile to go find deeper water. And so a lot of my fish live on bluff walls and more vertical style, banks, those really steep, almost 90-degree banks in some instances. And so that small body, medium diving crankbait is the ultimate tool to get them to bite, because a lot of the times in the winter, they're up anywhere from 5 to 12 to kind of 15-foot range. And that bait helps you to hit that depth zone perfectly. And so that's kind of my two things. I think, like, when we think about winter crankbait fishing, and if I had to kind of pull back at a 10,000-foot view, that's why I'm going to pick it up. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the why, more than just like, yeah, I've always caught fish on a crankbait. There's that factor too, but that's kind of why I think that they eat the crankbait so much better in the winter.
Gotcha. And you said something there that I wanted to key on because, I've thrown, a bunch of square bills and, the standard, what, the 1.5 and the 2.5s, and I've thrown a few deep cranks. But you mentioned small to medium size on that money badger.
Mhm.
It what type of depths are you looking to hit with that?
Yeah, so the money badger, the one I throw the most is 6.25. That's my favorite size. And that kind of falls in the size range of, like, when you see a rock crawler, 3XD, bandit 300, wiggle warts, all the different kinds of those, what you consider small body crankbaits. That 6.25 hits it the best. But that bait will dive on 10-pound test. It'll get about 12 to 13 foot deep. And so a lot of the times, what I'm actually doing with that bait, especially fishing that more vertical cover, is I'm actually just tracing that wall, like a bluff wall. And I'll actually, like, trace the bluff wall down with the crankbait. And every now and again, I'll kind of knock it off, an outshoot rock or like a limb laying out. But for the most part, that bait actually never touches the bottom. I'm just cranking it. So you got to imagine the walls up like this, right? I throw that crankbait up here and I just trace it down. And when it hits the maximum diving depth, there's somewhere on this wall to that maximum diving depth, and they're going to eat it somewhere in here to the turn up. I almost never get bit up close to the boat. It's always somewhere in here. And then when it starts to turn up, and I think a lot of the times on the turn up, they're actually following it, or they're sitting it just a little bit deeper and they actually come up to it and grab it. And a lot of the times I can tell where they're actually coming from by how they've actually got the bait in their mouth. And so, like, if I've got one and I hook it with that bottom hook, like, and you pin it in their mouth sideways, that fish was probably sitting in like 15 foot, saw that crankbait coming and rushed up under it and grabbed it. Whereas if I catch them on the back hook, they were sitting on that wall and that thing came past them and they rushed out and grabbed it. And so, like, that's what
Dude.
I'm actually doing with that medium diving crankbait a lot of the times. I think people don't understand that. Like, if you watch my videos, it looks like I'm right on the bank. But in reality, I'm in 25 foot of water throwing onto a vertical piece of structure and just tracing that piece of structure down and then just moving water as fast as I can.
So you're essentially like paralleling these bluffs.
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
Yeah.
and I don't know, and I've always, again, I'm not good at it, but
Yeah.
I always thought crankbait, you had to bang it into something. Like, that's when I always catch fish, oh,
Yeah.
there's a stump, and you hit it, and then the
Yeah.
fish,
Yeah.
chews it.
Yeah.
I just assumed you were hitting bottom in all these crank, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's digging and banging off of stuff,
And I mean,
but
dude, that's definitely a key in some situations. I mean, I'll take the money badger, like, you go to a lake like Cherokee and it's a lot flatter. And I've been to a lot flatter lakes all throughout the country. I actually took it to Lanier and caught some fish on it. And it was just like long tapering banks. And so you throw it in 5 foot of water and just bang it off every damn rock until until you're in 12 or 13 foot of water and catch them that way. But in those situations with that more vertical cover on these more riverine style lakes, more bluffy kind of stuff, I may hit a tree limb every now and again. But for the most part, I'm just tracing that bluff wall. And then a lot of times, like when it gets really cold, like what we've had, we were messaging on Instagram a couple days ago just about how cold it actually is. And so I saw 30.
sucky.
Oh, it sucks. I hate this. Like, someone left a comment the other day and they're like, try living in Iowa. I'm like, yeah, I chose not to live in Siberia like you do. I'm not used to this. I don't like this. But like, I saw 38-degree water the other day for the first time in my life. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going like, I got to do something a little different to get these fish to eat. And so it's just a stop and go retrieve in that instance, because there's nothing that crankbait's going to knock off of in a lot of those situations to get that more reactionary bite or give it enough of a pause to actually get them to eat it. And so I just start crank, pause, crank, pause, and they'll smack that thing every time you stop it. And it's just like, yeah, I love it, dude. It's something I grew up doing it, and it's kind of a culture around here, especially like East Tennessee and like that Southeast Ohio Valley is kind of where like balsa crankbaits came from. And so, dude, we mastered the crankbait all the way from a foot of water to 25 foot of water. And like this, just
Dude.
that money badger falls in that like, fall, winter, early spring crankbait category. And like there's a crankbait for that job, just like there's a crankbait for shallow water and there's a crankbait for deep water. It's just that's where that money badger falls, is right in that job range.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, for you mentioned, seeing how the fish are hooked,
Mhm.
and that kind of telling you where these fish are coming from.
Mhm.
What percentage do you think it is of the time that they're coming up out of deeper water versus you're actually getting it down and putting it right in front of them?
I think it all depends on what the water's been doing. And what I mean by that is, are they pulling water through a dam and creating artificial current with that? Is there wind blowing on the bank creating artificial current and positioning fish? Has the water been pulled down and pulled fish off the bank and pulled them a little bit deeper? Is it colder than normal and they're living in a little bit deeper water? Like those are all factors, right? But to kind of answer the question and direct in more on it, whenever I have moving water, and so again, where I'm at, and this is applicable across the country, current is king. These fish, his entire life revolves around whether that water is moving or not. I mean, you saw that when you were on Chickamauga, dude. I mean, like when they've got current pulling through those dams, those fish eat. When they
Oh
turn
yeah.
that current off, they're like, I'm done with this crap. They just disappear. And so, depending on if I have current or not, a lot of the times, if I do have current, it's going to position those fish. It's going to pull them up onto that wall. They're going to find a little, jut out in the rock or a little tree limb or something that they want to get behind, and they're going to sit there and they're going to wait for something to pass by their face, and they're going to lash out and they're going to eat it. It's all reactionary, and it's like they know when the current's moving, the buffet line's turned on, and they can sit there and they can be lazy and they can eat. But if they've drawn the water down or they've turned the current off, a lot of the time those fish will either kind of disperse and kind of spread out and not isolate in a key area. And that's another thing we can talk about here in a minute, is like that style of cranking. I've said this in my videos, and people probably I think sometimes I say things and it passes by people and they don't realize how key it actually is to getting the fish to bite. But it's like I'll get 4 or 5 bites within like 100-yard stretch, and it's because there's something about the way the current has positioned those fish in that like 100-yard stretch that they want to eat. But when they turn the current off, those fish spread out. And so those same fish may not be in that 100-yard stretch. They may be in a quarter-mile stretch of bank. You know what I mean? But also when they turn the water off, a lot of times they'll just kind of ease deeper. Or if they pull the water down, it's, say the fish is sitting in 8 foot of water and they pull 5 foot of water off their head. Well, they went from sitting in 8 to 3. And so what are they going to do? They're going to follow that water down. They're going to get back in 8 foot of water, or even in 12 or 13 foot of water, just to feel secure. And so it all depends kind of on those factors. A lot of the times I'll see those fish come up under it like that when there's not much current or there's been a big like weather change, either a big temperature drop, post front, they'll get deeper like that, and stuff like that. But then if I'm like, if you're in the front or there's a front coming in, you got cloud cover, you got break up on top of the water. A lot of those times, those fish are actually going to be on that wall and shallower up on that wall, and you're going to catch them in that, 5 to 10 foot range versus fish when it's not like that. You're going to see them deeper and actually want to come up to that bait and eat it.
That is a lot of information to unpack, dude. I can tell you're a teacher. Like I almost don't even know what like where to go. But I guess a kayak specific question.
Hmm.
One of the reasons I shy away from like a deeper crankbait is especially back when I had a paddle only kayak.
Hmm.
I'd lob that thing out there and I'd go to winding on it.
Hmm.
And yeah, the bait's coming back to me, but it would also like pull me to it.
Yes.
Is there anything like does that just not come into play as much because you're primarily using smaller baits?
Yeah. So So I kind of had to teach myself. It's funny. That's a funny question because there's two things that I do in a kayak that a lot of people don't do. One is throw a crankbait, and two is throw a jerk bait. Like those are the two that people are like, how do you throw a jerk bait in a kayak? It's like, well, jerk bait bite's that good. You got to figure it out. But no, for real. A lot of the times with both of those baits, but specifically, obviously, the crankbait and what we're talking about, and this can apply to any moving bait that is going to have a lot of drag. This can apply to bladed jigs, anything really. I try to put myself parallel with whatever cover that I'm fishing, meaning like if I'm going down a bank this way, I'm not casting in front of me. I'm casting at a 90 at the bank or like a 45 at the bank. And I'm making sure that there's as much resistance, meaning the whole side of my kayak is facing that bank that I'm fishing so that it doesn't pull me as much. Because it's a hell of a lot harder to pull my Hobie or, like your Crescent or whatever. It's a lot harder to pull that boat this way than it is to pull it this way forward because it's made to go forward. That's where the point's pointing. It's pointing towards that. And so if you crank a crankbait in front of you, you're going to pull yourself forward versus where if you're throwing into the bank at a 90 and cranking it out and keeping your rod in front of you loaded up towards the bank and you're cranking that thing, it also helps with the hook set. That boat isn't going to get pulled sideways into that bank as easy. And then two, with the hook set, when you're cranking it that way and you've got the rod in front of you, you're cranking it from either your right to your left at a 90-degree angle. Well, that fish bites. You've got a bunch of distance to turn whatever opposite direction it is to make sure that you get a good hook set into that fish versus front. You can still get that turn, but you're like here and you're trying to fight this and get this hook set like this, where if I'm cranking it here and the bait's, I'm trying to describe this to audio listeners. If I'm cranking,
It makes sense to me.
if I'm cranking and the bank I'm cranking is to my left, and I'm cranking at a 90-degree angle away from my left, I got a lot more distance to turn right this direction than I do if I'm cranking it straight in front of me. And that goes for any bait like that. You watch any of my videos, that's what you'll notice is like I have a dominant hand, and I'm a right-handed guy. Well, technically I'm ambidextrous. It kind of depends if what we're doing. But like if I'm fishing a cast and reel, I'm reeling it with my right hand. And so I'm going to fish to my left because that's the dominant direction in which I'm comfortable fishing. And that helps me not only with efficiency of hook sets, but also helps me with efficiency of casting accuracy, everything, because I'm a lot more comfortable fishing to my left being a right-handed fisherman than I am fishing to my right with being a right-handed fisherman. If you get what I'm
Casting to the left side is your forehand versus
saying.
your
Yeah,
backhand.
exactly. Yeah,
You're trying to go forehand, play to your strengths as much as possible.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
I like how you described it there with the using that pulling sideways.
Mhm,
Your kayak's made, the pointy end
mhm.
goes easier,
Yeah,
the wide, longer end slow it down. That's probably
exactly.
something that I it sounds obvious, but I don't think about it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. I didn't think about it until someone asked me the question because I was fishing a jerkbait and I made a video about it. It was in a tournament. Did really well in the tournament fishing a jerkbait in a kayak. And like someone was like, dude, how do you fish that jerkbait in that kayak? And I'm like, I mean, dude, you just fish it. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. Like, how do you fish? Like, you just fish it. And then like I got to thinking about it. I'm like, what am I actually doing here and why am I doing that? And then like when I started to like look at footage and kind of review and like look at it, it's like, oh, I'm, again, another tip here, fishing with the wind, fishing with the current. So that makes it a lot more efficient. I'm just making micro adjustments with like, my rudder versus like big adjustments trying to fight up against the current. And then I'm also fishing my dominant side with my dominant hand. And then I'm fishing across my body and across the kayak. So they're just that kayak can't move. I mean, that like, dude, a Hobie can't go right to left like when it's setting straight. You're not just going to move that boat sideways. That's not how that works. It can either go forward or you can turn it out. But like to just take it and go and scoot it to the side, dude, that's almost impossible to do. They're not made to do that. And so it's like that's when it kind of started turning in my head. It's like if I'm going to fish this way and I'm going to be this power fishing cranking guy in a kayak, I got to figure out the most efficient way to do it. And for me, that's what I found to be the most efficient way.
I've done something similar on flats, like a grass flat.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't think to do the same thing with cranking, but like a grass flat, just turn the kayak sideways and let the wind. And you get a big enough gust standing up, you act like a sail and it can still move you,
Yeah.
but you're way slower than if you're nose pointed and the wind's just I mean, you feel like you're flying.
Exactly. It's the same thing. It's just all about using the boat, using your boat as, either resisting water or not resisting, how efficient does it need to be in that situation? And in that situation for both of us in those instances, you want it to be, as least as I want it to be efficient moving forward, but not efficient moving sideways, where you want it to be efficient, slowing down and not wanting to move sideways as fast. I mean, dude, it's like, I think those are the little things about kayaks. Like when you're in them enough that you start to learn the little nuances. And I truly believe that's like with any person, that's what takes your kayak fishing to the next level is when you learn the nuances of what your boat can and can't do and like what you want it to do. And then dude, you can do crazy things with your boat and make it do the job you want it to do really good.
It's well said.
Yeah.
I want to talk speed because I'll just stick with speed for now. I see the tactical bassing guys. They're the first ones that I heard talk about, just straight burning a crankbait in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Is that part of your wintertime game, or do you do a variety of speeds with that bait?
So what those guys are doing is really interesting, and I like it. And it's something that we've done for years, and I didn't know that it had a name. We just were like, "Hey, let's fish it fast and throw some pauses into it," kind of deal. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, like that's a tactic, right? That's a tactic in the toolbox that you've got with the crankbait. But it all kind of depends on water temperature. Again, do I have current? Do I not have current? Do I have wind? Do I not have wind? What am I trying to do here? What are the fish's temperament? Because sometimes, they want to stop and go. They want to speed crank it with a pause. You know what I mean? And more than anything with that technique in particular to kind of address that one, that is just getting a total reaction bite. I mean, that is pass this thing by their face as fast as you can and then kill it. And those fish have one or two options. They're either going to eat it or they're going to swim away from it. And like most of the time when it's like, and it just stops, those fish are just like, oh God. And they crush it. You know what I mean? And so like that's that kind of like it's playing even more into what I was talking about a few minutes ago is that total reactionary bite. Now that being said, I have seen times when fish want it just like creeping it. You know what I mean? And like, you're just keeping it going and just kind of a steady retrieve and they just knock the piss out of it. You know what I mean? I've seen times when you got to speed it up a little bit and it's just how many times can I hit that piece of cover until one eats it. I've seen stop and go when it gets really, really cold. But I think a lot of it just has to do with kind of playing with a bunch of different speeds and it's almost like a jerk bait. Figure out what the cadence needs to be for that given day. And then start kind of building up your catalog. Like I know right now, if I go to the lake, if you said, "Hey, Alex, you got to go catch 5 fish on a money badger," I'd be like, "Okay, I'm probably going to be a stop and go retrieve kind of day because this water's stupid cold and these fish are just gonna, you got to get them to react." And like I said, when that thing stops, they got one or two options: either not eat it or eat it. And most of the time, they're going to eat it because you've already kind of got them with that reaction. They're like chasing it, trying to track it down, and then you kill it, and they just overwhelm it. And so, yeah, that's kind of like, I don't know. It's a roundabout way to answer the question. It's you got to let the fish tell you what they want in any given instance. But I found that warmer water with breakup on top, just crank that crankbait. Just crank it. Just move, groove, crank it. Crank it is, just keep a steady pace. Just keep it going. Cover as much water as you possibly can. When it starts to cool down, when it gets more adverse, when you're post front, when you don't got as much breakup on the water, start throwing some pauses in there. Start throwing, maybe a pop in your rod tip every now and then. Just a little something different to maybe get those fish to react. Where in a normal scenario where it's like, a good day to go fishing and, break up on the water, pre-front, it's like the time those fish are going to eat. And so just put the crankbait in front of their face and let them eat it versus having to trick them a little bit more and get them to react in a different way.
Gotcha. I
Yeah.
like it. Very varied retrieves, figure out what's working.
I'm so sorry. I just burped right into in the microphone. I thought I silenced mine. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You get an output burp on that one. It's not my podcast. Normally I just let it go, but since we're not my podcast, I have to apologize for that one.
Nah, dude, we're pretty informal. I think I'm the least serious of the serious angler crew.
Yeah, I gotta bust Bailey's balls every now and again and kind of break him up a little bit. He gets a little too serious. You know what I mean?
He's a much better angler and podcaster than I am. So,
I don't know about all that now. Don't blow his head up too much.
um, I know I've seen you catch a bunch of brownfish, and I don't know, is that the types of lakes that you're in, those highland reservoirs, Tennessee? I know you got a mixed bag,
Mhm,
large and small.
mhm.
Um, it Do you notice a difference, I guess, with retrieves or colors or anything between them, or is it pretty much you do the same thing and sometimes you get the brown ones and sometimes the green?
Pretty much that. It's interesting. I think with winter drawdown, to be honest with you, it's a theory, but it seems to hold true after 25 years of fishing these lakes. Winter drawdown exposes a lot more smallmouth, and I think it's because those smallmouth live at those depths. Like they live at 25, 30 feet during the summer, and then the lakes get drawn down to them, and the water temperatures drop because the smallmouth are kind of optimized in that sub 55-degree range water. You know, largemouth like 55 degrees and below, they're just kind of like they'll get a little pissy on you. They're just like,
Mm.
yeah, if I gotta eat. A smallmouth is like you gave them a shot of adrenaline, and they're like, I want to kill everything that moves. And so I think when they bring the water down to where they're living, in conjunction with the fact that the water's cooling down, the smallmouth show up more in the winter. And so, like, springtime will roll around, those lakes will start going back up, and it's almost all greenfish. Like you'll run into a brownfish every now and again, but it's almost all greenfish. And then another factor there is where am I fishing at? We do a lot of dam discharge fishing. Like we'll get below these dams and they'll be, pumping that water through that dam, either like sluicing it through the bottom and generating power or actually dumping it over the top of the spill gates to generate power. And so like when they're doing that, dude, there's just a massive population of giant smallmouth that live in that area. And it's because there's two things that a smallmouth loves there: current and cooler water. And they just live in those areas. And so a lot of the times it's going to be predominantly big brown fish. But what's really cool about it is it's going to be predominantly big brown fish. But when you stumble into a green one, it's going to be a freaking giant because it's like one that's like lived on the treadmill its whole entire life. And so its tail's like that big around and it's like 9 pounds and 20 inches long. It's something crazy like that. And so, yeah, dude, that's kind of the two factors I think is kind of what plays into it. I think the smallmouth just optimize better in cool water. And then two, what's crazy, there's actually a video I put out last year. It was a tournament that I fished on a lake called Norris. And it was crazy. One side of the pocket was largemouth, the other side of the pocket was smallmouth.
Same pocket.
Same pocket. Two different bank types. One was more gravelly with chunk rock mixed in. The other one was like literally straight vertical cover, but no mixing whatsoever. Now, here's the wild part. I went back the next day because I caught him so good. I was like, I just want to go back and catch him again. He had flip flop. The green fish got on the vertical cover and the brown fish got on the gravelly, bouldery stuff.
No way.
I have no idea why.
And still not mixing.
No mix.
Like staying in their own little clique,
Mhm.
just, "Hey, we're gonna go over here today. You
Yeah.
guys take the bluff."
Yeah. And like it's funny. Like
Dude.
you watch some of my cranking videos and I'll be like, still not caught a brown fish, still not caught a brown fish. I'll hook a brown fish and then I'll catch like 4 on one stretch of bank. It's the weirdest. I don't know why they do that, but they do. It's weird. It's just like you never see smallmouth and largemouth school together almost ever. Like if you get on a largemouth school, they're almost all largemouth. You get a smallmouth school, they're almost all smallmouth. But the spots in the smallmouth will mix together, which is it's kind of part of one of the issues that we're having in Tennessee right now with the Alabama spots and all that stuff is the breeding is because they school together. But very interesting. I don't. I need to ask a biologist about that. I don't know why that is the way that it is, but it is.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we're having a similar problem. I feel like that's a whole you could do a whole series on that, talking about those Alabama bass and the what they could potentially do to some of the fisheries.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it this week. I'm having my biologist buddy John Hammonds back on because we're actually having a huge law set change in Tennessee over all of that about smallmouth and trying to mitigate it as best we can. So it's going to be interesting. That podcast is going to be interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are they, I've gotta double check. I'm almost positive there's certain lakes in Virginia where it's no longer any limit on the spotted.
Yep.
Like, they want you to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Is it Tennessee kinda the same way?
Yeah. Yeah. Our problem is in the late stages in a lot of these lakes, which is sad. So like Parksville is done. It's completely Alabama spotted bass. So that's done in most all the genetic testing they've done. All the Tennessee lakes that have spotted bass in them now all originated from Parksville, which that set of bass all originated from the Coosa River. And so that means an angler went and caught them in the Coosa River, brought them to Parksville and put them in there, and then they proliferated. And then people caught them in Parksville and took them to other lakes, and now they're proliferating there too. So Gussie won the classic here in Knoxville. You catching smallmouth, quote unquote. Every smallmouth that he caught, I think they did genetic testing on every single one of them. Every single one of them was actually a hybrid. It was actually a mean mouth. It wasn't a smallmouth.
No.
Yeah. So, and that's the problem is they breed out the population. And so it's not an over competition thing. The smallmouth can keep up competition wise. So can the largemouth for the most part. It's literally so you have an Alabama spot and a smallmouth. They spawn, they make mean mouse. Those mean mouse, if they breed with an Alabama spot, are going to make essentially a full-blown Alabama spot. And by like the 4th or 5th generation, there is no smallmouth left in them, and it's just Alabama spotted bass. And so, yeah, dude, it's not a good problem to have. It's a very bad problem to have. And it's the saddest part about it is we're going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but I always got to get on my soapbox on this one. The saddest part about it is like once it started, there's nothing you can do to stop it. Like you could go and keep 100 bass a day. Every angler could go keep 100 spotted bass a day. But the problem is they're going to catch one and they go, damn, is that a smallmouth? And they'll put it back and it's a mean mouth and it'll go breed with another Alabama spot or another smallmouth and it'll just make another mean mouth and the problem just keeps on going.
Yeah, case in point, what you just said about Gussie. I mean, on TV, I thought they were smallmouth. Everybody said smallmouth.
Yeah.
And to know that they've got different DNA is kind of crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy, dude. So
yeah. I want to jump back to a kayak specific question.
Yeah.
When you crank in a kayak, are you sitting or standing?
Oh, I'm sitting. I sit the whole entire time. And that's just because I'm moving and grooving. So I got to keep my forward motion going. I've either got my motor on 1-2% and I'm using my foot steering or I'm pedaling, either one. I think it's hard if you have a paddle, like if you're paddling, it's going to be hard to crank in a kayak. I'll just be honest with you. But if you've got a motor or able to pedal and you've got something to move you forward and your hands are free for the most part, I'm going to sit down the whole time and crank.
That was something. It's kind of a piggyback on the earlier question because I think I fished for about 10 years because I'm stubborn and stupid.
Yeah.
With a paddle only.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it the right way, and I'm not going to get a motor, and I'm not going to get a pedal drive. And I wonder how many fish I could have caught if I'd had a drive and like if I'd gone to it quicker. Just for that ability to run and gun.
Yeah.
Like you can still do it, not to discourage guys that like the paddle only if that's all you got, but you cannot go as fast and cover as much water as with like when you can just keep those legs going and hands free to cast and you don't have to put the rod down and paddle stroke, put the paddle down, rod back up, cast again. I used to hate that. There's days where I wouldn't go out, if the wind was going to be up over like 7 miles an hour because I was going to spend half the day like trying to fight it to hold in position to fish.
Yeah. Well, that's what I tell everybody. I'm like, you can definitely paddle a kayak. You just better be ready to fish a certain set of scenarios and do certain things. It's like Drew Gregory. Drew's a great example. Drew fishes a certain way. And so his kayak is set up a certain way to go fish a certain way. But that's what he does. And he does it really, really good. You know what I mean? Where my kayak set up I have 2 or 3 kayaks that are all set up different ways for different jobs. And it's like my Hobie, the way I've got it set up is set up to be the power fisherman that I am and crank a crankbait, throw a slobber knocker, just run, gun, and move as much water as I can.
I like it. There's Russ. I mean, that's kind of his style. And if he's not the best, he's one of them.
Oh yeah.
He's showing that whole KVD, I guess it's really KVD is kind of who I'd trace it back to. You mentioned it earlier. Like that style works in a kayak, not just in a bass boat.
Absolutely. What's funny is like now that forward facing sonar has kind of come onto the scene in the kayak world, like I'm starting to fall behind again because like for a while there, I was doing really well because like everybody else was like daubing a worm and throwing a wacky rig. And I'm over here like hucking a 6-inch swim bait and like moving water and just going. Like by the end of the day, I'm so damn exhausted. I don't even know what my name is. It's because I've worked so hard to catch my fish. And then now like everybody's got forward face and they're starting to beat my ass again. So I finally got Mega Live. I got Mega Live on the kayak, so we'll have to do that a little bit. But it's just it's very interesting to see. Like it's in certain scenarios, my style of fishing can be damn near impossible to beat because there's just a certain set of fish that are going to eat. And it's like KVD, dude. I mean, like I mean, for his whole entire career, when you really look at him, he won so much, but he won so much because they were fishing lakes that set up perfectly for his style. And I mean,
Yeah.
dude, you get that man on a offshore pile, 15 foot of water with a 6XD, you better hold on because I mean he's going to take your lunch money. And it's the same thing with how I like to fish. You get me on a lake where they're going to eat a money badger good and it's 4 and 5 pounders. You better hold on because I'm going to take your lunch money. And it's just that style of fishing, dude. It's what we like to do, and it's cool, dude. I love it. I love to see all the different styles, though. That's the coolest
Yeah.
part. And then I love to try to get kind of good at all the rest of them so that I can at least compete. And then when my time comes around, I can shine real pretty. And then I'll settle back to my 6th place spot. I'm 6th place king of the world right here. So that's just where I kind of hang out.
Dude, I would take it. I've had a few really good tournaments and then a lot where, you do I'll be in a decent position after, day 1 or day 2 and then but not, I know if I go back and do what I did, I'm not gonna move up
Yeah.
or I might move up a few places and I'll do something stupid,
Yeah.
off the wall and just I've got so many bombs. It's yeah, it's embarrassing, but I
Hey,
don't know.
all
If you get
right.
a trophy every once in a while, it makes you feel a little better.
Hey, that's me, buddy. Listen, if I can get a little hard, I'm funny. It's like I just want to win a trophy. That's it. And they're like, "How much money did you win?" I'm like, "I'm not really worried about it. I like that trophy. I like the big sparkly things. That's what I want."
Yeah, you can't spend those.
No,
They
you
don't
can't.
go away.
They can't. I got a whole closet full of them too. That's the funny part. I don't even display them. I just keep them in the closet, but I know they're there. That's all that matters.
Dude, that's awesome.
Uh,
Hide them in the closet.
that's right.
Um, you mentioned money badger. I know that's kinda your deal.
Mhm,
I think you've been I don't know if somebody that's popularized that bait more than you have.
mhm,
What else? I know you mentioned, I think, rock crawler earlier.
mhm.
Um, are there some other baits that could do something similar?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so Money Badger in particular, I'll be honest with you. When they first sent it to me, I was very hesitant of it because I was a rock crawler guy. Like the rock crawler, in reality. So let's back way up. My first fish that I ever caught by myself, like as a kid, one of my earliest memories was on a Bandit 300, and it was a
Mm.
big smallmouth on a Bandit 300, and in like that was my first kind of fish that I really did it on my own, caught on my own, and like I remember, it's like that's the fish. It was like a 3.5, 4 pound smallmouth on a Bandit. I was probably 6 or 7 when I did that. Dude, I've been cranking a crankbait since then. So I've seen every damn iteration of every crankbait. Like it, and if it came out, me and my dad were the first ones to be like, we will try that because that's about 2.5 inches long and dives about 10 feet, and we like to do that. And so we've had them all. We've had bandits, the 3XDs. We've tried the Spros, the other Spro, the Little John. We've done the rock crawlers. We've done wiggle warts. I mean, all like different Japanese brands, Duo, all that kind of stuff. I mean, they all have their pros and their cons. And kind of when the rock crawler came out, we really loved that bait because it took a lot of what the wiggle wart had, a lot of what the bandit had, but they made it super castable and they
Mm.
made it dive just a little bit deeper. And so like that was like the gold standard forever was that bait because of how well it casted and it did the things of 2 other baits that we liked really, really well. And it caught fish, good hooks, come a bunch of different colors. Money Badger comes out, they send it to me, they say, "Hey, test this bait. We want to see what you think." And I get it out and it's like, oh crap, this thing is like it's got the waggle of a wiggle wart. It suspends, which is a whole nother thing about it that I love because when you do kill it, it doesn't slowly rise up. It just stops, just like a jerkbait does. It's a suspending
Ooh.
bait. Um, Great hooks with the Fusion 19, but then what it had that the wiggle wart didn't have, and what plagued us with the wiggle wart is the way that bill's designed. It comes down and like it almost makes like a teardrop kind of shape. I know teardrop's the right way to say it. It's almost like I don't even know how
It's
to explain
different.
it. It's
Like
different. Yeah,
I
it's like
can't.
really skinny, and then it's like a spoon, like shaped like a spoon almost. And dude, that made it where you cannot get that freaking thing hung up. Like it's the craziest thing. When I hit a piece of cover, if I am fishing around cover or laydowns or whatever it is, I reel it up to it and I feel it and I just kind of gently pull it through it. And it just every time it rolls way up and like pivots over that stuff and then settles back and starts going again.
Mm.
And then two, another thing that it does, which is really fascinating, and I learned this from the Berkeley guys. And I actually learned it from another. There's a guy called Keith Jones. I actually have his book sitting right here. I've mentioned this book on so many podcasts, but it's called Knowing Bass, and he talks about this in the book. Baits that track straight catch more fish, scientifically. So forever we've
Mm.
been told we want something to hunt,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
You want to hunt. You want to be
Go
erratic.
this way and then go this way and go this
Do
way.
all that stuff. Wiggle warts do it right, and like forever we thought that's it. You know, if it does that, that's how we catch fish. This money badger doesn't do that. It goes straight. And like you've got to hit it off something to get it to deflect. But the fish bite it on just a steady retrieve and not touching anything on the bottom. And so those two things in conjunction with a few other things that's really good about the money badger, just the way that it suspends and everything else about it, made that bait tick on to the gold standard for me above like all the rest of them. And I say that, and I know there's going to be some people listening. Well, you work with pure fishing, of course you're going to say that. It's no rah bullshit. Like, look in my boat. I have no other small body crankbaits anymore. I literally have a box. It's the big Plano, the big thick one. It has money symbols written on it on the little tat. It does, like, there's money symbols written on. It's every color money badger that they make. That's what I throw now because that's how much confidence I have in that bait that it can outperform any other small body crankbait that I have found yet. And now that's not to say that rock crawler can't work. It's not to say that a bandit can't work. I think those baits are still fantastic baits. I just think for the sake of efficiency and knowing what works really, really well, the money badger is the king of small body crankbaits right now in my boat. Could be different for somebody else, but just for me, man, I've fished them all. I've played with them all, and that thing it's special. And it's a walleye bait. I mean, it was made for trolling.
No,
Yeah, that's what
that's
the
what they made it for.
yeah, that's what the bill was made for. It was not made to cast and retrieve. Dan did some things to it to make it more castable and more like cast and retrieve, but for the most part, that was designed to troll behind a boat for walleye. And I took it and figured out that like this is as good as any small body crankbait ever made, and turned it into a bass bait that is in that 3XD rock crawler kind of world of crankbaits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it does anybody well, do you actually catch walleye on it ever?
I've never caught a walleye on a money badger.
Dude, that is so cool. They designed it for one thing, and it's like a happy accident almost.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I've had a lot of conversations with people over at Berkeley, and they're like, "You and that money badger, bro, like that was like never intended to do that, but you did it with it." And I was like, "Oh, that's I saw it, and I was like, well, I know what that's supposed to do. It's supposed to do this." And I went and did it with it, and it did it really good. And I've not looked back. Like
Heck
I actually
yeah.
did a video on it. It was rock crawler versus money badger, and rock crawler won resoundingly. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Or
you
I mean,
painted up the other guy's,
yeah, money badger won resoundingly. Excuse me. Yeah, and I even painted it and everything to try to match.
match color.
It's blades. Like everybody's, it's the color. I'm like, okay. So we literally got out like methylate paint and painted that thing. Went to another lake, and I still just wiped the floor with him. Like it's so interesting, dude. I wish I had a more like scientific explanation for you. I just know that that's what I've seen anecdotally, and that's what's worked. So
I like it.
yeah,
One last question on the I guess the money badger specifically. You mentioned you've got the whole box of colors.
Mhm.
I know I think I've seen more Blaze videos. Like I never would have thought Blaze would work until I watched you catch a
Yeah,
bajillion fish with it. I'm
yeah.
like, well, I guess I got to get that one now.
Hmm.
Is that still your favorite, or like do you have different colors for sort of different situations?
Yeah, so Blaze is my go-to. Blaze is my favorite. There's an explanation to that. We'll get into it here in just a minute. It actually comes. I didn't realize this. This was anecdotal until again that book, Knowing Bass. I read that book and and something Keith Jones talked about is fascinating. We'll talk about here in just a second. But for me, it goes blaze, special red crawl, firetail crawl, and then spring crawl. That's the four. Those are my four favorites, in that order. The spring crawl is a special one because I've found it to be a like cold front killer. Like once a cold front moves through, I don't know what it is, but that like ugly ass school bus yellow color, they bite it. Like in gin clear water, dirty water, it doesn't matter. It's the weirdest thing. But like if you're post cold front, high bluebird skies, tie on that spring crawl, and they bite it.
And that's the yellow.
It's the yellow school bus yellow with a muted orange belly. It's the weirdest. I actually did a video about it because we were post front, and I was like, "I'm gonna go. I know what I need to go do," and I went and did it. And they wouldn't buy. They wouldn't buy Blaze that day for some reason. If they wanted that school bus yellow color, and it's the same
That's
thing
interesting.
for the special red crawl. There's a point in time about March ish, like late February, if it warms up. If it's not warmed up and we get into March and it starts those days when it's like you can feel spring coming, you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
everything's kind of budding, the world's finally starting to come alive. They switch from blaze to special red crawl. And they'll still eat blaze, but you'll get bites 3-1 on special red crawl. And
Mm.
it's something about I think it has to do with water clarity, and I think the water hits a certain temperature that they wanna start spawning, but I think in that temperature range, there must be too some sort of microplankton or microorganism that starts to like bloom and the water starts to dirty up. You get a little bit influx from like mud from the rainwater and the lakes start coming up and everything gets a little turbulent. I think there's something about that red that they must be able to see better or they're keying in on or something that it becomes a better color than blaze is at that point. And I don't know what that is, but that it happens.
But a little bit dirtier water.
Yeah, a little bit dirtier water. Like when everything starts to mix and everything starts to come alive, switch over to special red crawl. And then firetail crawl, I just throw it in there because it's got a methylate belly. And I've seen like where I can go down a bank with blaze and then pick up special or a firetail crawl and go back up that bank with firetail crawl and pick up the bites that wouldn't bite blaze.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude,
Now,
that is dialed in.
yeah, yeah, dude. I've spent it was crazy. It was 2023. Yeah. 2023 I kept record. I've not kept record this year. I should have, or last year I didn't. But in 2023, the month of December, I caught over 300 fish on a Blaze Money Badger. That was just December. But like, and then I kept up with it in January. It was like over 200. And then like February was like up in the 300s again. Like just incredible amounts of fish caught on bait. But now Blaze. So Blaze is a color that so for years, like my dad was, he's a consummate fisherman. He's who I learned everything from. And he fished a bunch and always was looking for something to just be a little bit more competitive than everybody else, a little competitive edge. Started custom painting crankbaits and custom painting things, taking fingernail polish, like altering baits. And he really started to figure out that like methylate oranges got bites around here. And it got bites in other places that he went. Like he would go fish Gunnersville, or he would go fish Nickajack, or he would go, up to Kentucky Lake or to Cumberland Lake and like fish those methylate colors, and he would get bit better than not throwing it. So then there was some guys named Stacy and Kelly, and they owned a crankbait company called Mimic Lures. I think Mimic Lures is still in business. I'm not sure yet, or if they are still or whatever. They made balsa style crankbaits. Well, my dad actually sold them their first milling machine so that they could start mass producing their balsa crankbaits.
No.
Yeah, so when he did that, he made a bunch of custom crankbaits with them. Well, he made one that is he called it creamsicle. We kind of called it creamsicle for years. It was methylate orange, straight methylate, like straight methylate orange, and then there was another one we made that was straight chartreuse. Like we literally just take that thing and dip it, completely submerge it in that color. That's the only color it was. And like just smash fish on those two colors. Just the straight bright is neon colors that you could get. And what was really crazy is like the methylate orange did really well in the winter in gin clear water. And the straight chartreuse did better in the later months when it would start to warm up. And
That's
like,
crazy to me
yeah,
that that it works so well in the clear water. Like it would make sense to me if it was, oh yeah, that bright color in the dirty water so they can find it.
yes.
But the
So,
fact that it gin clear is
yes.
cool.
Oh, yeah, dude, I'm talking lakes around here, like, you'll have 25-foot visibility on some of these lakes in the middle of the winter because you have 0 sediment. There's nobody on the lake stirring anything up. All the phytoplankton's dead because it's cold, and so these lakes just clear, and, I mean, they get so clear, and, like, I've literally watched my money badger crank to its maximum diving depth, and then you see just an orb come off the bottom and grab it and, like, start swimming back with it, and a fish has got it. Like,
Dude.
it's crazy. So for years, we just did this. It's something we knew. We did it. We caught fish on it. It never changed. It never got old. Like other people would fish these crankbaits. It didn't matter. It was year in, year out. They would eat an orange crankbait or that straight chartreuse crankbait, but it was always the orange one that played. And even we got to the point where, like, we custom tie jigs, like straight methylate jigs. I pour my own Ned heads. I do straight methylate orange Ned heads. Like it's just something we do and it gets bites. I don't know what it is. I wish I could explain it. I don't know. So years go by, years go by. I finally get this book. I started working with Berkeley. The guys were like, "You've never read Knowing Bass?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." They're like, "Dr. Keith Jones." I'm like, "I don't know who Dr. Keith Jones is." You got to read this book. So I get this book. Dude, I read it in a day because I was just like, it's a page turner. Like if you're a bass fisherman, like if I said, "Huh, I didn't know that," once, I said it 1,000 times reading this book. Well, there's a whole
Dude,
part in the book where he talks about bass, what colors can they see from a scientific perspective, and then what colors do they eat? Because the book is more about how to get bass to bite versus knowing like every little scientific detail about a bass. So, like, it's really cool.
practical then.
Yeah, it's very practical. Like, it's really cool to know, oh, a bass has a hormone dump at 60-degree water temperatures, and that's what makes it want to go spawn. That's great. But, like, once they're spawning, how do I get them to eat a lure? That's what we care about as bass anglers. That's what this book's about. And so I'm reading this book, and he starts talking about what colors fish, bass in particular, can see and why they eat certain things. So the eating certain things is all about contrast. What contrasts the environment around them? Period. End doesn't stop. What contrasts the environment around them, or what contrasts itself? So what they found was that baits that contrasted the environment around them, the bass could see more clearly. And then baits that contrasted themselves allowed the bass to then hone in on that object once it identified it was in its space. So they did a test where they tested like a myriad of different colors, and the number one color that they found was black back and silver. And because of those like two very stark contrasting colors, and then the fact that it contrasted the environment around it, made it where the bass could key in on it better, see it the best, and then attack it. Well, then later on in the book, he talks about colors that a bass can see. And one of the biggest misconceptions that you'll hear is that bass can't see chartreuse. And I'm about to contradict myself about the school bus yellow, which again, I don't know why they eat it, but this is interesting. Bass can see chartreuse. They can actually see neon colors, some of the best out of all the set of colors that we have shown to bass and like done experiments with. Neon pink, neon orange, neon yellow, i.e. chartreuse, neon green, neon blue, like these bright, like if you hit it with a black light, it glows. Those are the colors that bass sees some of the best. Blaze. So what's interesting
Mm,
about blaze is you got a dark back, this orange, like methylate side with a white belly and then black stripes. So you've got a bait that obviously contrasts the environment around it really, really well, but then also contrasts itself really, really well. And it's in a color spectrum and a set of colors that a bass can see really, really well. And so I
mm.
think if you've got a bass in the winter who's lethargic, he doesn't feel like doing nothing, it's cold as shit, and it's going like, I don't really want to move. I don't really, obviously they don't think, but in their little minds, it's like, I'm going to sit here on this log and not move because I'm cold. And then this thing just comes by. It's flashing. It's bright. They can see it really, really good. That brain goes, I got to kill it. And then they go kill it. And so that's why I think Blaze works so well is because, like, from a scientific perspective, it's actually kind of like the perfect color to get a bass to bite.
Stands out from the environment around it, and then
Yeah,
it's also I guess it's what as it's moving, they're seeing
the
the
rotation.
2 different colors, the
Yes.
blue or the
Black,
purple,
purple,
black,
some black, yeah, and
and the
then it's also got
orange.
those black stripes on the side, so that's another contrast. So as that thing's doing this, it's just like this flashing, contrasty thing that literally, like, if we look at Blaze, I mean, like, if you've got a Blaze crankbait, hold it on a white wall and just see, like, it's like, that thing is there. Walk outside with it, hold it up to a tree, complex as a tree is. You can see that it's definitely there. And that's the thing, is like, that's the environment in which a bass lives, is it can see that thing super, super well in contrast. And then two, I think in the winter, I don't know this. I actually talked to about a biologist about this, and he said he actually doesn't know, but it makes sense. I don't think a bass's eyes work as well in the cold as they do in the warm.
Ooh.
And the reason I say that comes from, so I do know this for a fact. Deep water fish, tunas, swordfish, the movement of their body actually pumps blood into their eyes to help their eyes function better, warms their blood up and pumps blood into their eyes so their eyes function better at deep depths where the water's cold. So
So they
because
gotta be moving.
they got to be moving, but it pumps that warm blood into their eyes, because when they get deep, it gets cold and their eyes don't function as well if they're cold. They function better when they're warm. Why wouldn't that be true for bass or any fish for that
Ah,
matter? And so I think when you're dealing with a bass in 40-degree water as well, I don't think his eyes work very good. And so, like, they work, but they're not working as efficiently as they would at 70 degrees. So not only does the methylate do all the jobs that it needs to do to get a bass to bite, but then also, if that eye isn't working super good, you squint your eye, you're still going to be able to see that blaze, and
still gonna pop.
it's still going to pop. And I think that that's why that works so well.
Dude, that is I heard somebody else say that. I don't even remember what I was listening to, but I heard somebody say that about the cold weather affecting their eyesight, and I was just like, I don't know about that. But
Hmm.
you're the second person, like, in a week I've heard say that.
Hmm.
Like, that
And I think
that
too, like,
is
if you
really
think
interesting.
about it, like rattle traps, bladed jigs, Alabama rigs, what do they all have in common? They're loud. They displace a lot of water. I think it's because a bass's eyes quit working as well and they fall back on all their other senses. Because blind bass
Mm,
survive. I mean, dude, you've seen,
yeah,
I've caught fat fish with one eye, I've caught fish with no,
doggy eye, yeah.
and they still survive in their environment. And it's because they've got a whole set of senses to fall back on that we don't, that makes them an optimized predator in their environment. And so I think that in the winter, you got to do all the jobs to get them to eat really well. And the money badger helps to do that, because not only you've got the rattles, you've got the movement, you've got the water displacement, you've got all that. Then plus you can see it really, really well when the eyes may not be operating as well.
I like it.
The theory, I mean, we'd have to do some science on it. I'm sure there's somebody that has probably done some science on it, but that, according to knowing bass, the methylate can see really well. And so that's, kind of plays into the whole theory of maybe their eyes don't work as well in cold water and they eat.
Dude, I like it. We've had so many theories for years that we're learning or maybe maybe not actually true.
Yeah.
I I I wanna see if they can actually, I'm curious how they did the tests on those saltwater fish and if they can replicate it in a freshwater environment.
Yeah.
That'd be a really cool, thing to
I have
try
to
and go get a
pull it
grant
up.
for or something.
It was super, I forgot where I heard it. So let's just hold on, hold on. Deep water ocean fish, blood to eyes. So we'll just see if Google grabs it. Oh, looky here. Yeah. So deep water fish have evolved special adaptations to see in the dark and in deeper water. Their large eyes, specialized eye proteins, and vascular heat exchange systems keep their eyes warm, thus making them more functional in deep, cold water. Yeah.
Dude, that's a lot of that was over my head, but I got the gist of it.
Yeah. So the vascular
Warm, better, cold, bad, at least for eyesight.
Yeah, so the vascular heat exchange. Some fish, like billfish, some sharks, have vascular heat exchange systems that keep their eyes and brain warm. This system uses a network of veins and arteries to maintain the core body temperature above the surrounding water, making their eyes more efficient in dark environments and in cold water environments.
So what we gotta test is if the bass have those vascular heat
So
systems.
they don't. They don't, and that's why
They
my
don't.
theory. That's why my theory is their eyes don't work well in cold water. It's because they don't have the vascular heat
Ah.
exchange.
So moving wouldn't help them circulate the
No,
blood.
no, yeah,
Ah.
moving doesn't. So that's the whole theory is they don't have it, so that's why the methylates work so well. Is because it pops so much that even though the eyes aren't working well, you can still see it.
They're blind, but the methylate,
Yeah.
they can see that one.
Yeah, I mean, dude,
I like that.
like my wife, God love her, she's blind as a bat. Wears Coke bottle glasses. I love her, but she wears Coke bottle glasses. And the thing is if I took her glasses off of her, she's not gonna be able to see well. But if I went and put on a blaze orange jacket, like for hunting and stood in the woods, she'd still be able to see that I'm there. She just wouldn't be able
Mm.
to make it out in detail that I'm standing there, but you're gonna see that color. And I'm thinking a bass is the same exact way. I think that water gets cold, their eyes don't function as well, but man, they can still see those bright colors. And I think that's why, like, what's always been the thing in the spring. Oh, throw red in the spring, throw red in the winter, red, orange, these bright colors. I don't think it has anything to do with a crawfish.
Dude, I like it. I'm sold.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to play with this now.
Oh, hey, great example. Just so everybody, look at the orange flag in the picture on the background of this. Why do we have orange flags? Because they're easy to see. Again, there you go.
There you go. There you go.
There's another connection.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk setup real quick.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned 10-pound line is what you're throwing on these smaller diameter or smaller crankbait, smaller diameter, get it down deep. What about rods, reels?
Yeah.
Are
So
you
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No,
Just curious what your setup
I was
is.
about to dive into it.
Go for it.
Yeah, so 10-pound fluorocarbon, I almost use that exclusively with every crankbait that I throw. Like even a 25 foot diver, I'm using 10-pound fluorocarbon. The reason for that is, well, actually with the super deep divers, 25-pound or 25-foot divers, I'm throwing copolymer. I actually like copolymer in
Mm.
those situations just because it's got a little bit, it's just a little bit tougher, but you can still get it down there because it's all about line diameter. A lot of people think that the composition of the line is what makes it dive deeper, but I've never found a difference in diving depth between a 10-pound mono and a 10-pound fluorocarbon. The only reason I throw the fluorocarbon is because in theory it has less stretch than mono, which it does. It has enough that it's noticeable when you're throwing treble hook baits. But the copolymer is kind of a middle ground, nice kind of area. And with 25-foot divers, when I'm grinding them off rocks in the bottom, a lot of the times that copolymer will be a little bit tougher. That's just a side note for anybody thinking about it. But small body, medium diving crankbaits, 10-pound fluorocarbon. I'm throwing it on a 7-foot medium, moderate to moderate fast action rod. I'm constantly experimenting with rods. Like I have, if you go back and look at my YouTube channel, you're going to be frustrated to try to figure out which one I like the best because I'm always playing with it, always looking for the right one. But if I had to like build the perfect crankbait rod, I'm a glass rod kind of guy. And there's some people hate them. I love them. I come from the old school. I grew up throwing an all-American David Fritz cranking rod that, dude, you could bend that damn thing in half and touch the tip and the butt together because it had so much glass in it. And so it's what I'm used to. You know what I mean? I'm used to really like sweeping into those fish hard, loading that crankbait rod all the way down to the butt. Just that's what I like. So I've gone through a few different ones. Veritas, so winch. So Abu Garcia used to have the winch. Winch was a great cranking rod, 7-foot medium, moderate fast. And now they've combined winch and Veritas together. So now they have the Veritas winch series, 7-foot medium. I like that one. I'm actually experimenting this year with Iaconelli's cranking rod. I really like, I always make this joke that I only use the pros equipment that I like. And I really like my, so much and promote it for him. But that's a joke, sort of, not really.
I like it.
So
I don't like you. I'm not throwing your bait.
I did. Let me tell you something. I forgot. I think it was Shane LaHue. He's like, "You need to try my cranking rod," and I was like, "No." And he's like, "Why?" I was like, "I'm not promoting your stuff for you." And he's like, looked at me. I was like, "I'm just joking, dude." Like, but I felt Iaconelli's rod at ICAST, and I was like, "Oh, this is like heavy in like a glass rod." And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's a glass rod." I'm like, "Oh, I got to get one of those." So I'm actually been playing around with that one. But to answer the question, 7-foot, medium, moderate, fast, something. If you like more of the graphite style, the kind of little bit of glass in there, but it's more graphite, more medium, go with it. If you like a glass rod like I do and you like throwing a spaghetti noodle, do that. But just something in that medium power to moderate action range. And a lot of that has to do with the parabolic bend. That's what I'm going for. With a crankbait or any treble hook bait for that matter, a lot of keeping a fish pinned is having that good parabolic action, because I'm sticking that fish with 4 to 5 to 6 smaller hooks instead of one big hook. And so when it starts surging next to the boat or it comes up tail walking, I want that rod to be able to absorb a lot of that shock and a lot of that movement and keep that fish pinned. And that's what that rod does a really good job at for me. I think another thing that I've kind of noticed anecdotally to me, and I don't know if there's any science behind this, but like when I'm cranking a rod, that more delayed, and that's what's funny is Ox rod is actually called the delay series. I'd never seen anybody else call it like that, and I was like, I really like that. That delay,
Slowing you down to keep you from taking it away from the fish. Is that the theory?
pretty much.
I
I
like it.
really think like not being able to feel it as good allows the fish to overtake it really well, and then you get a good hook into them. And because a lot of the times those fish aren't, they're trying to eat it, but they'll smack at it a lot. And so having a little bit of delay that when they do come up and just hit it like they do and take the water completely off of it, they've got that bait in the side of their face, and you may only have 2 hooks in them. And I think if you're throwing a fast action rod, what happens is you feel that instantly, and you go and you set the hook into them. And if you ain't got any parabolic bend and there's nothing to load up, all you're going to do is just rip that thing right out of that
Oh,
fish's
man.
face. I mean, like if you hook a hook in your hand, you don't try to slowly pull it out. No, you tie some braid around, you pop that bad boy out of your hand. That's what a
Mm.
fast action rod does to a treble hook. You're just ripping it right out of their face. Whereas,
I've
yeah.
So I was gonna say I've experienced something similar with chatterbaits. Like I've thrown a chatterbait rod that's way softer than what other guys do,
Hmm.
and it still doesn't make sense in my head. But I was in a shallow water area with grass, and
Hmm.
I could actually watch these fish come out. They'd completely engulf the bait, and I had a stiffer rod, and I would do the typical, you know, jerk on the hook set, and I don't know why it was happening. I wasn't sticking them. I don't know how many I watched with my eyes. Bait disappears, you feel it and go to jerk, and I was taking it away from them.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was something. I've heard people say what do you call it? The not the bill, the blade. Like
Pops
the
their mouth.
blade was popping it open or something, and I don't know if that's it,
Yeah.
but I know when I started throwing a cranking rod,
Yeah.
it's the one that I used to throw was glass, and I've played with a few different ones, but it's a much softer rod, and I just keep reeling,
Yeah.
and
It just,
it it's a big hook in those chatterbaits, but I just keep reeling it, and the rod just loads up, and I don't lose them,
yep. Yep.
and
And
I don't
so
know if
I think it's the blade. I experienced the same thing. I was fishing like a medium heavy, I was fishing like a 7 foot medium heavy, like you would a spinner bait. And I think the difference between a spinner bait, we're going to go on a tangent here for just a minute on bladed jigs and we'll get back to crankbaits. But so with a spinner bait, you got to think about it. Blades up here, there's a lower kind of unit down here that's the actual spinner bait itself with the skirt. And so when I think like a fish comes up and eats that thing, that it just like there's nothing to keep it from just getting hook into its mouth. Like it's just
hmm,
hook to face. And so they, like a 7 foot medium heavy rod, you just roll it, they knock the piss out of you, hit them with it, and you're just shoving hook into their face.
hmm,
With a bladed jig, on the other hand, they come up and they engulf that whole entire bait. That's what I've noticed about when they eat a bladed jig. There's no messing around with it a lot of the times. It's like what you said, bait disappears into their mouth. Well, I think when their mouth clamps down on it and you've got a fast action rod and you pop that blade up, that blade goes like that, and their mouth goes like that because it's just that instant reaction of like, whoa, I don't like that. And they're so much faster than we are that they've already spit that bait out and like got it out of their system before we can process that it's out. And then we're jerking it away from them going, what happened? Well, it's because it exited its mouth like a quarter second before our eyes could process that it was out. That's how fast they are.
hmm.
And so I think that's what happens. The blade pops up. Whereas when you got a moderate action rod, and like you said, just reel into them and kind of lean into them, that blade comes up slower and it kind of just rolls up. And then that hook's already grabbing and sticking them and getting into their mouth, and then you've got them stuck before they can process it and spit it out of their mouth. I think that's what's
Sli
happening.
so, like, sliding the mouth open and hook catching versus just jerking and
And
it
popping. Yeah.
doing that number and it
Yeah. Yeah, and I kinda
you
played around with it, just, like, different thing I forgot what exactly I did. It was something so random, but I was like, "I gotta prove whether I'm right or not." And I, like, laid a bladed jig down and, like, would pop it, and dude, the blade would come up so fast on a fast action rod, and then I got, like, a modern action rod, I would pop it, damn thing wouldn't even move, and it was because that
Mm,
rod absorbs so much of the shock of the movement that, like, the bladed jig itself didn't even really move. And so it's like a more slow action allows that whole thing to just load up, hook stuck in, get the whole thing, and then the fish doesn't even process that it needs to spit it out. Where with the faster action rod, you're hitting that fish, and that fish is like, it's that instant instinct of like, I gotta preserve myself. It's like this thing's attacking me, it's attacking back, like, get it out. But they can't
bad, it bit
do that.
me.
Yeah, or they can't do that with a modern rod. Yeah.
I like
It's
it.
yeah,
I
so back to
you explained it way more eloquently than I can, but yeah, I agree. I'm on board with that. I think it's similar with the crankbait. It just I don't know. Yeah, sorry to take us on a
no,
tangent,
no,
but
no, I love it. No,
with that
I'm a rabbit hole I'm the rabbit hole king of the world. I need my buddy here. I got a buddy that watches my live streams, and he counts all the rabbit holes we go down. Anyway, um, you need to come on sometime. We'll just literally not talk about fishing for 2 hours. It'll be great. Like, I talk about a little bit of fishing, but then sometimes we'll get off on Bigfoot too. So, but with crankbait rods, anything in that moderate action range, because of what I kinda said, I'm trying to stick them with 2 or 3 little hooks. I don't wanna rip them out of their face. I wanna really drive them in and, like, just, like, really pin that fish well and then keep them pinned, and so that's what that rod does for me, and that's kind of the design of that rod and the theory behind that rod. 6/8 gear
awesome.
ratio or 6 gear ratio reel. Anything in the 6 gear ratio. I find that I can be like a crack-addled squirrel and, like, get out there and just fish way too fast, and so 6 gear ratio helps me to slow myself down sometimes. And then 2, I've just found in my life, literally, again, 25 years of really hardcore fishing, that 6 gear ratio reel is just the ultimate gear ratio for cranking a crankbait. And especially those small body medium diving crankbaits, it's just like it's what I use. It's what I've always used. It's what I have a ton of confidence in. And I think that when you put that whole system together, it just makes like the ultimate crankbait catching thing that works. And so it works. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask one final question. I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Yeah.
But kind of a final takeaway. If we forget everything else, what's the one thing that we should take away from wintertime crankbait fishing? The one tip that we need to remember to help us catch more fish.
Just move water. Go. Go, 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 go. Don't slow down. Just fish. If you miss a fish, keep going. There's gonna be another one. Like, if they're biting the crankbait, just fish. I think in the winter, we have been preached for years. Slow down, downsize. We got to creep around instead of no, go fish, go, crank, 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 crank until they have proven without a shadow of a doubt they're not going to eat a crankbait. And then you can pick up an Alabama rig. Then you can pick up a Ned rig. But you've got to go fish it. So many people tell me, man, I cannot catch a fish on a crankbait. And I'm like, well, how long did you fish it? And they're like, 40 minutes. And I'm like, well, that's 40 minutes, not long enough. I was like, you need to throw it until they've proven without a shadow of a doubt they're not going to eat it. And then number 2, and I said this earlier, current is king. If you want to learn how to crank a crankbait, go out there on a windy day, go out there when it's pre-front, go out there when it's cloudy, go out there when there's some chop on the water. Those are the days that they eat moving baits. And so throw those the shittiest day that you don't want to be out on the water, go throw a crankbait and don't put it down. And I promise you something's gonna come undone before the end of the day, and you're gonna figure it out and you're gonna have fun throwing a crankbait.
Dude, I love it. I'm amped up. I still can't wait to go down to Florida in a couple days, but yeah, now there's hope for me when I come back now that I'm not going to be all depressed when
Oh
I
yeah.
get back to the freezing temperatures.
Oh dude, I'm telling you, I think you'll kill it up there. I mean, like, if I'm not mistaken, y'all got some kind of deeper, clear kind of reservoir deals up there, right?
They're in Virginia?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good mix, but yeah, I'm near Smith Mountain Lake,
Okay.
Highland. There's some other smaller places. Clater, I haven't been on Clater much,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's some highland places
Yeah.
that I hear guys get on a rock crawler bite. I never hear anybody talk about a money badger. So I'm thinking,
Oh, Badger baby. Go throw
yeah.
the Badger baby. I'm telling you, that thing will get it done.
Well, Alex, I really appreciate you coming on. Dude, I've learned a ton. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I'll give you the last word. Anything you want to plug or?
Yeah, no, just everything's Alex Road Fishing. It's got my ugly mug on it. You'll definitely see it. Big orange logo with a cartoon version of my face. So Alex Road Fishing on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I got the podcast is under Alex Road Fishing. It can be found wherever podcasts are found. Just started didn't just start a new YouTube channel, but started a YouTube channel about 6 months ago. Took a big hiatus off of it, but we've got it fired back up now. It's called Bass Fishing Tips. And so I'm going to do once a week, kind of deep dives into, what baits am I throwing? Why am I throwing them? Kind of do what we did tonight, just talk about some key tips, some takeaways for fishing, different things that I have. I think the one thing that I want Bass Fishing Tips to be is my experience on the water shared with you. And I'm never going to talk about anything that I don't know about, because I feel like there's a lot of YouTube channels that they talk about a bunch of stuff they don't really know how to do. And I'm just going to tell you exactly what I know how to do and what catches fish. And so you go check that channel out. But yeah, that's about it. Just go check all my stuff out. I think you guys will enjoy it.
Dude, I love it. Thanks again, and you got the best beard in our sport. I'm
Appreciate
I'm
it.
very jealous.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Take care, Alex.
All right. See y'all.
Alex Rudd, ladies and gentlemen. That was awesome. Alex is a fantastic fisherman. He is smart. You can tell just from listening to him. But it's one thing to understand a lot about the game, to understand the fish, uh, to have that intelligence, but it's another thing to be able to explain it. There's not many guys out there that can teach the way that Alex can and get those ideas across. So super stoked that he gave us some time here, and yeah, a lot of juicy information. I'm amped up to go through a crankbait when I come back from Florida. And we got 2 segments to go. Well, what we're gonna do, normally it's 2. We're gonna take a break from Kings of the Week for this episode. That's on me. Apologies. I didn't have as much time as I would have liked to kind of scroll through the social media feeds. The time that I did have, there was nothing that really popped out at me, and I don't want to cheapen it. I want that King of the Week to mean something. So we're just gonna not have one for this week. Um, Hopefully next week we'll have maybe some extras to make up for it. But yeah, no kings for this week. But we are going to do yakking on a budget, and it's I'll put it this way: it's not quite budget related, but yakking on a budget. I want to talk this week about rod covers, and it was kind of on my mind because I'm getting ready to travel, and I don't have a trailer. So all of my rods are going to be in the back seat of my car, kind of leaning, taking up one half of the car. I'm probably going to have 15 to 20 rods that I'm bringing with me. And I've noticed uh, the way to protect the rods in the past is these sort of weave style rod sleeves, and they do a good job. I've had a ton of them. Uh, the big hang up with them, the thing that always made me frustrated with these type of covers. Yeah, they do a great job of protecting the rod. You don't have the rods clinging together. You're protecting the line. The line's not rubbing against stuff and giving you a weak spot that's going to surprise you and cause you to lose a fish. Um, but what ends up happening is treble hooks want to grab the weave. So that's the one drawback. It's kind of a fatal flaw. And these sleeves ran around $10 anyway. Something that I had seen, these neoprene covers. They are, the dimensions are basically the same, but it's a softer material. It provides some cushion, and the ones I've been using, 6 Cents makes them. I think they're roughly $10, and I've been really impressed. I got a couple of them just to try them out, and I've been really impressed over the last few months. I upgraded to these. I figured for basically the same price, I'm getting an extra snag resistant feature. So yeah, these neoprene covers, if you haven't tried them, they are really nice. If you're new to the fishing, or you're about to pick up a new rod, I would recommend, if you have the ability to get one of these neoprene styles. I think Busby makes one also, but this style neoprene from 6 Sense, Busby, anybody else that's making one, I like this better than the old school weave. Uh, you can still drive a hook into it, if you go, really bury a crankbait hook in there, but it's difficult. It can be done, but it doesn't happen as soon as the hook touches it like it does with those weaves. Been really impressed with these. Yeah, for the money and that dampening, it's just a little bit thicker material. Those rods, if there is a little bit of movement, with those rods touching and rattling around while I'm moving in the vehicle, that helps dampen it and protect those rods. And yeah, so that is my yakking on a budget tip for this week. Get yourself rod covers and protect those rods. Um, yeah, I guess if we were going to bring in a money saving aspect, I would say it is cheaper to protect the rods that you have with a $10 little sleeve than it is to buy a new one, or have to go pay somebody to replace a guide or tip or something like that. So rod covers, good. Um, let's see. I think that's going to do it. I think that's all I got for this week. Safe travels to anybody that is getting on the road headed down to Florida. Um, I cannot wait to be down there joining you soon. Hopefully, we will all catch some big bass, have a good time. For everybody else, stay warm, stay dry, and we'll talk to you next week. Until then, remember to take a kid fishing.